Hey everybody, it's me, Asinellus, and welcome back to r/ProRevenge, where today we'll be looking at some great revenge stories. So stick around if you want to get a good laugh and see some instant karma in action. Alright, let's start us off with a short and good one. Level 3 crooks get obliterated by level 99 boss. Don't commit crimes you are too stupid for. What you need to know in advance. This didn't happen to me, but to my boss. He's a district attorney in a larger city in Germany. He drives an expensive car and has a device that signals the police where he is and that he is in danger. The participants are boss, 5 youngsters, B1 to B5, and B5 was the mastermind, and the police. Now to the story. One day, he drove home from work and suddenly 2 boys, 17 and 16, B1 and B2, jumped in front of his car, forcing him to stop. My boss was really scared, thinking that they were going to take revenge on him because he puts many people in jail, and immediately pressed the button on this device to inform the police. The police immediately rushed him all available units. But they immediately shouted at him, accusing him of trying to kill them. The 3 other boys ran to the scene also shouting at my boss, and they're all going to call the police and that he's going to lose his license. Then one of the 2 of them offers that he could give them all the money he got with him and they would leave him alone. At that point, my boss decided to serve some spicy revenge to these buttholes, knowing that every police officer available is rushing to the scene and he only needs to play for time, so he immediately agreed to put under one condition. They all need to sign a written agreement containing that he paid the money and they're not going to press charges to inform the police. Those idiots agreed. So he wrote the contract and everyone signed it. After they handed the paper back, they demanded the money. But my boss just laughed at them, stating that no one is going to believe him since they had a written proof that what they had done was highly illegal and that they're going to jail, not mentioning that the police were coming. The police came from effing everywhere. Damn, he couldn't resist a big smile when he was describing their faces, and I can totally understand that. They were looking like scared ghosts on the verge of existence. One of the smart boys, B3, thought that this paper needs to vanish, so this dummy decides to rip it out of my boss's hands in front of the police. As they would later realize, this was their biggest mistake. Then they tried to escape from the police, but B1, B3, and B5 were caught. The police thought that they wouldn't get to know who B2 and B4 were unless one of the others snitched. Well, they didn't need a snitch because they all signed the paper with their real effing names. So police got the other 2 as well. Fast forward to court. There were several trial dates, but I'll shorten it. Do you remember what I told you that B3 made a mistake? Well, here in Germany, there's a law from the Nazi era still in place that gets you a minimum sentence of 5 years when you rob a motorist. B3 and B5, both above 18, got 6 years in adult prison, also because of their criminal history. B1 and B2 got 3 years in juvenile detention, and B4 was lucky with only community service. All in all, my boss actually didn't need to do much. They destroyed their lives mostly on their own. This one's amazing, but these guys, they got so unlucky. They probably just said, look at that big expensive car. Surely the guy has lots and lots of money. And well, turns out that man also had access to a lot of police who he could call upon at any given moments, and yeah, they got what they deserved, I guess. Alright, here's one that's slightly longer but seems just as good. Scrape asbestos for $8 an hour, with no protective gear, not a chance. So this story occurred during a very difficult time in my family's life. My wife and I had just went through losing our first child 2 months before her due date, and to top it off, I had lost my job. So my parents agreed to let us move in with them until we got back on our feet. My wife and I both took the first jobs we could find. She took a job at an upscale restaurant and it paid very well. I took a job at a furniture store / auction house as a maintenance guy, as he called it. Which was a heck of a pay cut, but I was willing to take anything I could get. Little did I know, this guy owned several properties around the area, and I would constantly be driving from place to place fixing issues at various rental properties. On days there were no issues at those properties, I would be dealing with their auctions, moving furniture around the sales floor, or delivering furniture to customers. This was all fine and dandy. except for the fact that I have no real construction and maintenance experience, and if my name is on something, I'm going to take pride in my work. On my first day, I should have left. They sent me to a house that was so water damaged under the kitchen floor from a leaking pipe, there were obvious signs of mold. I asked the guy how long this has been going on. He said, laughing and sarcastically, "Only the last 2 months since I moved in. I've left them several voicemails and they didn't even tell me you were coming today. But it's cool, I really just want my family and I to be able to eat at our dinner table." His floor was so bad that when you walked on it, your feet sank into the wood and water came up while making that squishy, watery sound, like when someone sucks on a popsicle a little too hard. Knowing what I know, this had been going on much longer. I apologized, said that this was my first day and that there must have been some sort of misunderstanding on our end. My boss shows up and drops off some materials for me to do, as he called it, a quick fix with plywood and caulk on this guy's floor, and to also duct tape the leaking pipe. Me really needing money and thinking this is temporary till he can hire a flooring company, a plumber, and possibly some framers, I get right to work. After a couple of hours, I had cut a good portion of the floor out and replaced it with the plywood. Told the guy I'm sure they're going to get back to him about this situation very soon, and headed back to the store. A couple of days go by and I asked the boss when he was going to do the repairs on that rental property. He asked smirkingly, "What repairs?" So I reminded him which house I was referring to, and he said, "Yeah, you don't remember something you did just 2 days ago?" At this point in my life, and even now, I avoid arguing with ignorant or stupid people. To me, it's just not worth my time. I felt horrible for the tenants in that house. The smell of mold was ungodly and it needed to be reported. But I needed to keep my job till I found another one. So a couple of weeks go by and I've been ridiculed by this guy, cussed out, told I don't get paid drink water after moving furniture around for 5 hours straight with no breaks, not allowed to smoke cigarettes period, etc, etc. One day he pushed me to my limit. He has me follow him to a house in his old Penske-style moving truck with 3 other people, 2 of which are riding in the back of the delivery truck, which is illegal, simply because someone needed to hold the 5-gallon bucket of water because he refused to turn the water on at this property. We show up, the thing is uninhabitable. All the windows are knocked out, trash everywhere, no front door, no back door, no electricity. Everything was stripped and there were even used condoms around. To top it off, this house has asbestos siding. For any of you who don't know, asbestos was banned for use in any building or facility after many people got lung cancer from breathing in the dust. It is very bad for you. The other people begin cleaning the house and he tells me that my task is a test. He wanted me to scrape all the asbestos siding in an hour all around the house so that it could be primed and painted the following day. I tell him that it's illegal for someone like me to remove asbestos. People call in teams that wear hazmat suits for this sort of thing. He fired me on the spot and told me I would have to find my own way back to the store and to have my vehicle off the premises before the following day. Me, still feeling the effects of what I had just gone through, saw this as a perfect opportunity to loosen up and have a little fun. I made it my mission to destroy him and everything he stood for. Step 1. I called up all the tenants and informed them that I was no longer the maintenance guy because he had them calling my personal phone, and informed the people who he still had living in unlivable circumstances that they all had cases against him and that everything they were dealing with was against the law. I informed the labor board about everything he had me do, every situation he put me in, and definitely the asbestos incident. They informed me that I needed to contact OSHA as well. So I did, and told them everything as well. Several months went by and I knew nothing had happened because one of the co-workers and I became pretty chill and still texted each other occasionally. One night, I had a few too many, randomly posted an ad on Craigslist as the following in their name. Buying cigarette filters 5 cents each. We know this is weird, but we're performing tests on used cigarette filters and are very passionate about our work in producing a safer filter. Please call ... I called from a private number later on the next day and he answered in an angry voice stating, "No, we're not buying any cigarette filters. Unless you want furniture, then do not call this number," and hung up. Later on that year, the Labour Board eventually rained down hell on him. They found out that over 200 people were fired and hired within a 3-year period. When I was there, only 6 were staffed. His business licenses stripped. Granted, his son opened a store in a different location within about a year of this happening. He had to either get 3 of his 7 rental properties up to code within X amount of days, or they would be condemned. And actually ended up getting sued by one of the families for breach of contract and continuing to harass them after they ended their lease. The real kicker of this is he had wronged so many people over the years that when he died of cancer this past year, only a few close family members showed up to his funeral. I even heard one of his 3 sons didn't even show up. What would you all have done differently? Wow, this one's just so good because the guy that got the revenge, he was like acting on behalf of so many people. He was like the savior of that community. This one person had abused and just taken advantage of so many people, probably in really bad situations, just for so long, and finally, someone was able to, like, stand up to him and get through to him and alert the authorities, and this man got what he deserved. This one sounds nice, and the comments and upvote count seem to agree. How I made the worst employer in the world lose a multi-million-dollar account. To be honest, the I in this title is not me, but a former colleague who does not have a Reddit account. We work together in the same ad agency. I will give my personal context first, and then write her story exactly as she told me. We worked together in one of the biggest ad agencies in the country. She was a director, and I was a manager in different departments. It was a global group, but it honestly sucked. I quit because I was burnt out. I had a Game of Thrones politics and daily occurrences of both sexual and moral harassment. That place was the worst professional experience and one of the worst personal ones I have ever had. F them. Now for the story, it's a long one. I was hired as an accountant director for a huge ad agency. Let's call it FFC. My account was one of the top 5 accounts in the agency and was worth at least 7 digits. My boss, the accounts VP, was one of the worst human beings I have ever met. He was sexist, rude, and liked to play favorites. When I got there as a young and okay-looking woman, I instantly became one of his favorites. He was married, by the way. One day we left a happy hour together and he offered me a ride. I lived nearby him, so not overthinking it, I accepted. He made a move on me. I politely refused and left the car. After that, my life became a living hell. He would not include me in important meetings and then complained I didn't know things that were discussed. My reviews went from 5 stars to 1. He pretended he didn't remember a raise he had promised. He would talk with my team and ignore me. The work, which was already hard, I worked 80 hours a week, became unbearable. I almost quit. I had a long conversation with the agency HR, which went nowhere, because she was his personal friend, and I even escalated it to the president, with whom I had a friendly relationship, and he said I was reading too much into things. One thing I did right, though, is that I had a great relationship with my client, so they were afraid to fire me. I had helped save the account, which was almost lost when I was hired. So, they played a smart hand. They hired a girl who had worked with my client on his former company, with whom he had a friendly relationship with, to replace me. They then put me aside on a smaller account, which was on the verge of being lost, so they could justify firing me when that had happened. But then I got lucky. My original client got promoted and opened a marketing manager position under him. When I applied, he even skipped a few hiring steps. This was October and I was to start in January. I asked him not to disclose to the agency he had hired me until I had the chance to tell them myself. The position would not work directly with the ad agency and I no longer managed their account, so there was no conflict of interest and he said okay. Honestly, he couldn't care less. I was planning on giving them my 1-month notice required in my country in November, so they could have had time to find someone else. I was fired October 31st. It would have been the worst experience in the world if I cared. The VP asked me into his office and fired me. He said no one would believe me, that I would never find another job in the market, that I had ratted him out to the HR, that I was incompetent and all the worst things someone could have said. He sent me to HR to sign some papers and told me to leave the building afterwards. I recorded him. When I went to HR, the woman in charge sat me down and kept making snark comments about me not appreciating working in one of the biggest ad agencies in the world. That I could have been great. It was surreal. Being fired in my country grants people a fair amount of money. I would have received around 5 months' pay according to the law. She wanted me to sign papers accepting that. I said no and played her the record from the VP. She went pale because she knew that was a lawsuit and also that the global team would not like it at all. I left that day and I said I would contact them through my lawyer. Never said anything about the job lined up. The next week, I, my lawyer, my recording, and a bunch of other documents, emails, text messages, sat down with the agency to negotiate. I ended up with over 15 months' pay. Both parties signed an NDA, which included me saying I had quit. I then took a 2-month vacation, told my new boss I had made a deal while quitting, but that I had not disclosed I was going to work with them. He said he would tell them himself not to worry. Comes January and I start at my new job. My boss then tells me that since I was the one with the most experience in advertising agencies, I would be a consultant to the annual deals for all the agencies that managed all their accounts. This included allowing new agencies to pitch for us. My boss, who didn't deal with FFC anymore, of course forgot to tell them about me. No feeling in the world was better than entering the agency as a client. I was ecstatic, sitting in a meeting to see their pitch and watching the VP's dumbstruck face when he entered the room. I was nothing but nice, made pertinent questions and smiled all the way through. I ended up telling my boss in confidence what had happened. He authorized me to advise against the agency, said that if compliance knew about their behavior, they would lose the account anyway. They lost the account. They lost 3 other accounts in the same year. The whole leadership team was fired. The agency closed. The VP can't find a job for his life. And I just got promoted. I was honestly on the edge of my seat reading this one. This was so good. This was real pro-revenge. If you want to sexually harass someone and they pull this, that is revenge at its finest. You don't just leave. You leave and get a job at one of their clients, refuse to work with them, and eventually the company goes bankrupt. That is just the best possible progression. Alright guys, that's it for today. I know there weren't too many stories, but they were all quite long and they were all, they were so good today. And if you like what you saw guys, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment down below. Tell me what you thought about the stories. Tell me what you want me to do next. Tell me anything, really. You can tell me what you had for breakfast. I guess that would work. But either way, guys, that's it from me for today. And all I want to do is see you all here next time. Goodbye!